Last Wednesday, during a rally outside a privately run homeless shelter in Brooklyn, Borough President Eric Adams called for organized tenants to destroy this environment, referring to the many Brooklyn buildings with substandard conditions created by irresponsible landlords which have forced tenants to move out. That same night, a large number of Brooklyn elected officials, led by PP Adams, met to map out a plan to push for changes to the rent regulation laws next year. The group feels the city's housing crisis is tied to income inequality and weak rent regulation.
That's right, and State Senator Jesse Hamilton added that the changes are needed to, quote, make sure abusive landlords are arrested and they pay large fines. And as Eric Adams told the Daily News, everything needs to be back on the table. We're going into a crisis, and we're going to be hit with a housing typhoon, and it appears as though Albany is moving as if there's a mere shower. So what exactly does this new plan entail, and how will it tackle what many consider one of the biggest concerns among the borough's residents? We want to welcome back Senator Hamilton to BK Live.
Thank you for having me again. It was a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
All right, can you break this down for us? Because as not being a native New Yorker, moving to New York and understanding the housing market and the way people are able to sustain a life and maintain a lifestyle in New York, rent regulation just seems like a foreign language to me. So last week, several elected officials got together at Borough Hall to discuss what you refer to as an emergency regarding rent regulations. Now, who took part in this roundtable with you, sir?
It was the Borough President, Eric Adams, City Councilman Robert Cornegie, City Councilman Reynoso, Assemblywoman Latrice Walker, Melissa Davila, and Diane Richardson was at the meeting. Our areas cover the most densely as far as rent-regulated apartments in Brooklyn. It's one of our major concerns. In my office, every other day someone is coming and complaining about a landlord harassing them in their apartment as far as maybe not providing heat, not providing services. One building, a woman said she didn't have a working bathroom for 3 years, and she had a disabled child. So we're on the ground, we're knocking on doors, we're just letting people know that they do have rights. And they cannot be abridged or taken away. And I think a lot of people don't know what their rights are. Landlords are doing, and I just want to say for the record, all landlords are not bad landlords. It's true. It's just a small percentage. But when you do see the egregious actions that they do to seniors, whereas one senior, she was in the hospital, the landlord realized she was in the hospital, he went to court, she came back as a marshal notice on her door. So we just want an even playing field. And we want people to live with dignity in our community, especially the seniors who've been here during the hard times. Yeah. They're in their golden years, and they're stressed out about their living conditions. How would they make ends meet? Right now, in my district, the average price for a studio apartment is $2,000. Wow. If you're making minimum wage, you're only bringing in $1,400 a month.
And that's if you're in the workforce. So you had an awesome coalition of the willing there from yourself to Walker to Cornegie, my council member. So who wasn't at the table? Who should have been there?
I left out Assemblyman Walter Mosley and Jemani Williams, City Councilman Jemani Williams was also there.
So then you guys are there and you're making it happen. Who is missing from this coalition that should be there in terms of representing, even if you said if there's 1% of landlords who are not good actors, they may represent thousands of people living in Brooklyn, even just that tiny sliver. So who do we need to bring in, and whether they get shamed into being at the table or you just have to pull their ear in, who needs to be there?
I think everybody needs to be there. Every elected official in New York City should be there. Because we're losing a substantial amount of rent-regulated apartments in New York City. The NYU Furman Center said for unsubsidized apartments, we lost 330,000 from 2002 to 2014. That's the size of the city of Buffalo being taken off the table. And so we're just trying to bring more awareness to our neighbors upstate New York who don't see, they can't even fathom paying rent for a studio at over $2,000 a month.
But how can we make them invested? Like BP Adams knows the route. He was up in Albany for many years. You're in Albany now. How do you get your colleagues to say, listen, this is our reality. It's not just a yes or no vote. What's the horse trading that happens to get them to see your view if you're living it?
I think a lot of residents now are becoming aware of what's happening. They could feel it. when they go to work and they're coming home and they're trying to make ends meet. And across the board in New York City, black, white, gentrification is not a color thing.
Yeah.
It's economic. And what people realize, people are coming from Manhattan, you know, with average price for an apartment maybe $2 to $3 million. And people are coming into Brooklyn now and being pushed out of Brooklyn Heights and going to Park Slope, being pushed out of Park Slope, going into Prospect Heights, and now Prospect Heights, now to Crown Heights. Yeah. So it's a domino effect, and it's not based on color, it's based on your economic status. Right. And so people are understanding now we're being pushed out. You know, we're working. A lot of the families now, their children cannot afford to live in a neighborhood where they grew up at. Homes were under 10 years ago under $300,000. Now they're at $1.5 million. Right. So you have to make a certain amount of money, myself included. I couldn't live in my neighborhood right now if I had to buy. Right. I would be pushed out. So people are saying we need to have more affordable housing. We have vacant land with the city of New York. Right. And the city should be the reservoir to make sure that we have affordable housing for residents. You can't say the minimum wage should be $10 an hour, or which is below that, and say, well, you can live on this wage. And I ask people, where can you live making $10 an hour in New York City if you have a child? It's virtually impossible. Yeah. And we shouldn't have shelters as a vehicle. As a
fail-safe.
As a fail-safe mechanism for people who are working every day. And when I do go to shelters, people are working every day.
Yeah. And go into a shelter to sleep every night.
To sleep every night. So we have employers making millions of dollars, and their employees are living in shelters. Yeah. It's a disconnect there somewhere. And we just want to bring more awareness to that to make sure the legislation reflects the pain of the people in our communities.
Okay. Now, you've been in office for the last 10 months. Last time we were here is right when the special election was happening.
Right.
You know, how has the legislature changed in that times with, you know, 2 of the 3 guys, the men in the room are no longer there? What is the atmosphere like now?
Surprisingly, when we vote on issues upstate, they talk about home rule, that we shouldn't make decisions on home rule upstate New York. And I said, okay, I can go with that. What about home rule for New York City? You have 8 million people, and we have people upstate New York making decisions against the will of the elected officials in New York City.
From the MTA to schools to rent regulations.
To rent regulations. So under ERSTAT, the New York State Senate and Assembly make rules for New York City. And there's a disconnect between upstate New York and downstate New York. And we're trying to bridge that to let them understand what's happening. So you can't have people upstate who have no idea what's happening in New York City voting on issues that are affecting our daily lives. People are literally being pushed out of neighborhoods, living in shelters. Our schools are not up to par right now. And if you don't have the skill sets to make $80,000 a year, like what I want to do is make sure that we have schools, if you're behind 1 grade level, you have to go to after-school program to get put back on par. They do it in the private schools all the time. If you're not performing well, they pull you out the class, give you individualized attention, and put you back in. Mental health is a big issue now also. So we need to also make sure that we have affordable housing and also assisted living housing, supportive housing. Many people who live in homeless shelters have mental issues. They go through the educational system, and we spend over $120,000 from pre-K to high school, and you come out making a job at $8 an hour? I mean, that's not a good return on our investment. So we have to look at how we're educating our children to make sure that they have the skill sets in order to compete. And we should have coding in the schools. Coding should be mandatory.
So is this the battle that's going to bring home rule finally to New York City and make us self-determined people? Is it going to be the housing piece, the education, or something like the MTA?
I wish for the best. I pray for it, for home rule. But the dynamics is that a lot of upstate senators do get campaign contributions.
Right.
And those
from the real estate lobby.
From the real estate lobby, from other sources who, and they tend to vote the way, as far as their colleagues is asking them to vote, they're not voting the way we want them to vote. So it's an issue of keeping them aware and trying to make them understand the dynamics of what their votes are and how it impacts millions of people in New York City. So until we get to that point of reaching out to upstate New York and saying, hey, we have a crisis down here in New York City. We need you to put pressure on your elected officials because we cannot vote them out of office. And they know we can't vote them out of office. So there's no repercussion if they vote against us because they know they will keep their position. Like with the DREAM Act. You have young men and women, 4.0 averages, who are here undocumented, and they can't go to college. But we will spend $60,000 to incarcerate somebody. So to me, there's another disconnect there also. We're spending more money on homeless shelters, $3,000 a month to put somebody into a homeless shelter, into a 1-2 bedroom apartment. And we could take that money to build more affordable housing. And I think that's where we're at right now. Because we can build affordable, but we're not building affordable.
So
Are we maintaining or preserving housing, or how do we get ourselves out of this
We're losing.
crisis?
Just think of the MCI increases.
Yeah.
You have an apartment. Somebody comes to fix your roof. They charge you $5,000. They fix your roof. But imagine that increase stays in your rent forever. Even when it's paid off, it still stays in your rent. And it's
So break down MCI. We're going to get into the alphabet soup thing.
Exactly.
MCI, so this is when there's major projects, major capital sort of initiatives.
Correct.
If the roof is just a mess or something, the boiler blew up, and your landlord has a one-time lump sum bill, and it's supposed to be spread across the entire of the building, entirety. So once that bill is paid off, that charge is meant to go away. But they're essentially using it to bump the rents.
Or is there now a new cap?
The rent, it doesn't go away. So once you pay for that over a 10-year period, you pay for the capital improvement, it's paid for, it's done, it still stays on your rent.
Right.
It's sort of like a rent-a-center for apartment owners, where you just keep paying and paying and paying, and then it also increases the threshold to meet deregulation. And there's no one's really monitoring the work that's being done, or if it was done properly. We have people still have mold in their apartments.
Yeah.
And that's, and like I said before, we have a lot of good landlords, but we just want to make sure that people can live with the dignity and respect that they should have in New York City.
Can you talk to us about enforcement?
Enforcement is a big issue. We have the TPU unit and tenants protection unit, but we need more officers. It needs more money to actually do the job, because sometimes you have an apartment that's regulated and is deregulated, unlawfully. And the average person doesn't have enough money to go to court and sue the landlord. 95% of people go to landlord-tenant court don't have an attorney.
Right.
I'm an attorney myself. We have forums with judges to educate as many of the tenants in our community as possible. But the enforcement unit, we need more money for the enforcement unit. And it's the enforcement unit is just to make sure that the people are being treated fairly. And what's happening now, people are buying buildings, and the rent roll doesn't cover the debt coverage.
And they know that buying it.
And they know they're buying it.
Yeah.
And so what some people do is they say, well, we have X amount of seniors in this building. We have maybe 50 seniors, so it'll be over 70.
Yeah.
They'll be passing away soon, or we will accelerate their process. So now it's not uncommon for a person to be offered $50,000 to $100,000 to leave their regulated apartment.
Yeah.
And then the second wave, which was at 60 Clawson Street, where you have people, Department of Homeless Services, putting homeless residents into a building, which I have no problem with that. But when you have a point where the building is 83 apartments at one time, regulated, and then in a 10-year period, you only have 6 that are left because of the conditions that are brought forth to the building. So that's a problem. So we need to have a percentage cap on how many homeless apartments can be put into a building, where seniors are scared to come downstairs.
You know what? We have a still. Garma, can we go to this map from the Furman Center at NYU? So there's a map that shows here right on the screen. So this is the number of building permits that were applied for and granted after 421A was going the way of the dodo. So we see that there's a spike, and in Brooklyn, there's a 45% project and land size building permits issued. So this was in response to them thinking that 421A was going away. So if this is the response from the developers in that lobby when they think that you're going to end their little cutaway, that sweet little deal that they're getting, what kind of thing are we facing next year as you're fighting for legislation that we had a big fight for now? If this is what they thought when it was ending, it's only going to be worse next year.
Yes, it's an accelerating process, the 421A. And I have nothing against the 421A per se, but we need a higher percentage for affordable housing. Under the current 421A, I can have affordable housing off-site, meaning that I can have it one building downtown Brooklyn, right where we're at.
You build your $1 million condo here.
And then I can do my affordable housing in East New York. Or I can do my $1 million condos down here, but we have a separate entrance. So the low-income people have to go through one entrance.
Get in that rickety elevator.
They get the rickety elevator or climb the stairs.
And
they don't have access to the pool. They don't have access to the fitness center. They don't have access to the rooftop. Area that has a fabulous view of Manhattan. So we just want to make sure that if we're giving money for subsidized housing, it shouldn't be that a person feels like they're like a second-class citizen. Like separate but equal. We should be moving away from that. basically everybody should enjoy the tax subsidies that are being offered, regardless of your income. And that's something that we're looking at with the 421A. And the people who are building these buildings can't afford to live in the area. So we have a group of people who are building buildings who can't afford to live in the area. So the 421A was great at one time because we needed the housing. But now we're at a point where houses are selling without subsidies. They're just selling because Brooklyn is hot. Brooklyn is, because of this television program, BK, has made, it's internationally known.
Thank you, Senator.
And that's a wrap.
All right. Oh, so
No, but to anyone that is watching that wants to be involved
Right.
and to be part of the coalition of the willing to stay vigilant about this,
Right.
how can they reach out to you and to
Call
other-
my office. It's number 718-284-4700. We're there Monday through Friday, and we make home visits, believe it or not. We have mobile offices. So you have a block association, you have an after-school program, a senior citizen center. We believe in being mobile on the ground in the community. So we're one of the only office right now that's doing the mobile office.
No, back in
We've
March, you
seen
really,
you.
really pushed for reforms in the legislature in developing these new technologies to better serve constituents, and we
Right.
thank you for your efforts with that as well.
And always thank you for having me here.
All right.
Absolutely.